Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Well, National Voters' Day is celebrated all across the country on January 25th every year since 2011 to mark the foundation day of the Election Commission of India, that is 25th of January 1950. The main purpose of the National Voters' Day celebration is to encourage, facilitate and maximize enrolment, especially for new voters. President Ramnath Kovind virtually graced and addressed the 11th National Voters' Day celebrations organized by the Election Commission of India on Monday. During the event, the President conferred the National Awards of the year 2020-21 and also launched the Election Commission of India's web radio Hello Voters, an online digital radio service. Speaking on the occasion, the President said that on National Voters' Day, he would like to remind everyone that we should always respect the valuable right to vote. The right to vote is not a simple right. People around the world have struggled a lot for this. Since independence, our constitution has given equal voting rights to all citizens without any discrimination on the basis of merit, religion, race and caste. For this, we are indebted to the makers of our constitution. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze how to empower voters and strengthen democracy. Joining me on the program today are Akshay Raut, former Director General, Election Commission of India, Sunil Chaudhary, political analyst, and KV Prasad, senior journalist. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Akshay Raut, let me begin the program with you first. Let's first try and understand, analyze, why is Voters' Day celebrated? What is the importance of Voters' Day? What does it mean for the Election Commission of India and the citizens of this country?
I think it's a good day to discuss all these issues. The National Voters' Day is basically an intervention to strengthen democracy. Let's go back to, as the Honorable President has underlined, let's go back to history a little bit, just a little bit. The founders of the Constitution gave two things to India in terms of looking at the future of democracy. One, they straightaway gave the power to vote to ordinary citizens, unlike in many places of the world. Universal adult suffrage was given, irrespective of the level of literacy, the level of poverty, and the chaos that was there at the time of partition and then the transition to independence. And this country had several problems, but still each ordinary citizen got the right to vote. That's big. That's a trust imposed on the people for their running their own show. Number two, it created the operational machine of the Election Commission of India. And today is the birthday or the foundation day of Election Commission of India, which was created, which will operationalize this idea of universal adult franchise by getting the citizens to vote their own representatives and their government. So these are two big things. But over a period of time, as we moved from 50-51 right up to the election of 2019, which was more recent, and then several state general elections, one trend was found that, we are the largest functional democracy, and we have an electorate which is perhaps the aggregate of many populations of countries together. But there is definitely a democracy deficit, which was noticed sometime around 2009, 10, 11, because people who were supposed to register and were qualified to register on the electoral roll were not doing that. All the people who are not doing that who are qualified to register. And once registered, all the people who are not voting. So that definitely pointed to a democracy deficit. That is where a program called, which is now the flagship program of Election Commission of India, Systematic Voters Education and Electoral Participation SWEEP, came in 2010. And quickly following that, the National Voters' Day, which you mentioned, and the President presided over it today on the 11th version of it. It is 10-year-old, so today is a very iconic day. And on that, one of the quick objectives is to expand enrollment, to have all the people, like perhaps compared to the last year, 2 crore more people have been added to the electorate. And particularly the new and young voters who become eligible on getting into the age of 18. So it is a celebration of people getting on the electoral roll, getting on the bandwagon, which really determines the future of democracy. Right. So this is a great day. And the president has rightly underlined it. On the move, is the total. I think the Election Commission has added one more line of aspiration to it, that no one will be left behind. No voter is to be left behind. All to be enrolled, and once enrolled, all will vote. That's
Ab-
the whole purpose in context. Yeah.
Absolutely. Very well summed up, very well, put forth as far as why National Voters Day is celebrated and what is the importance of the day itself. KV Prasad, let me come across to you now and let's talk about, what has been done over the years to empower the voters. What has the role of the Election Commission of India been, and how, certain policies, certain schemes have been brought about to ensure that the voter has been empowered.
I think if you look at what has been said by Mr. Rao, of course, very elaborate, and added to that is I think there has been a systematic attempt on behalf of the Election Commission periodically to enroll and also to kind of bring the voters along on the electoral rolls. Now, we all know all over the world there has been a basic understanding that the young are not very enthused by the whole concept. And that's where the most important thing is. When you're 18, you can get the right to vote. The awareness is spread. And to get the voter to first and foremost to get himself or herself enrolled on the electoral rolls is a process. And I think over the years, if you notice, the Election Commission has made this process far more easier thanks to the technology that is available. People have multiple systems in getting it done. And that takes a big point for the Election Commission and its reforms in the using technology. I think one more innovative concept that has been evolved over the years by the Election Commission is to try and bring brand ambassadors, which I think it's a very good way because the young identify themselves with some brand ambassador. A popular person in that region could be from any field, but somebody who has a public image. And if that person encourages people to come and enroll and vote, it adds to the luster and also makes the young aware. So I think these are one or two important things. And as it said, electoral systems and electoral reforms is a continuous process because every election teaches you new things, the new challenges that come across, and how does one go forward addressing them, making it easy for the electorate, for the elector to go and cast a ballot. Or rather, now we have a pressing of a button on the EVMs. So that's what it makes about.
Absolutely. New challenges have been addressed, and the Election Commission of India has constantly been evolving and innovating as well to try and make the entire election process far more simpler. Since we are here then, Sunil Chaudhary, let's also talk about, why is it important to vote? How do we ensure that we bring out more youngsters that, turn 18 on a yearly basis? How do we ensure that they too join this great, exercise of coming out and voting? And what does it mean for a democracy?
For the first time that the young, rejuvenate, vibrant democracy like ours has shown that the voters play a very decisive role in a very peaceful democratic transformation. One could increase participation of voters right from the first Lok Sabha election and other election to the 2019 Lok Sabha elections and many subsequent assembly elections. The increased voting participation shows that not young and the new voters, but even the old voters have been very proactively participating in the entire electoral machinery of the country. Besides the role of the Election Commission, which has been over the years taking proactive role, the use of technology has also strengthened the participation of voters. I would say that this kind of change, when we see the three significant transformations in the entire democratic process of the voter, we see when 1950s, the first time that adopted by bypassing many other Western countries, when we focused on the bypassing the educational barriers, the gender barrier, and the property education. These were three important hindrances which actually created hurdles for the Western democracies. But bypassing all these three hurdles, brought universal franchise as the first stepping stone for strengthening democracy. The second important thing, as I just mentioned, is in terms of increasing participation of voters across classes. And one could see how this from 47% in the first elections to 67, 68 in the 2019 election shows that the voters have actually started taking keen interest in the democratic transformation. And this went from bringing down 21 years to 18 years, an additional strength to the voters. I would say, lastly, that National Voters' Day, where election commissions, proactive initiatives, and information communication technology in terms of new meanings this democratic process, would say that it is not only national voters, would say it is basically the voters empowerment day. The voters have become empowered specifically in the 21st century, and that shows the strength of democracy, India's electoral democracy.
Absolutely. All right. Since we are here, then Akshay Raut, let's also talk about some of the biggest challenges that we have faced as far as voting is concerned, as far as the election commission itself is concerned, and how did we overcome some of these challenges, and what are some of the challenges that are yet to be overcome?
Let me try to put perspective on what my friends have already stated. And KV was talking about young not being enthused so much. In fact, yes, absolutely. There was a time when young will feel that voting is a job of those who are middle or old age people and who are perhaps not having much other important things to do. But now, to raise the finger with indelible ink has become a fashion statement for young. In fact, if they don't do that, I think that's plenty of selfies in every election where youth, the campus students, would like to say that they have voted with pride. So we have traveled some distance. And I'll put some figures also. Second part is that compared to the 50, 55, 60, we really broke the barrier when we had 66.4% voters turnout in 2014. And then which was even better in the last national election 2019 are 67.4%. And between 2009 to 2019, in 10 years, because of all these continuous efforts that my colleagues have been talking about, the enrollment has been 20 crore rupees added. So that's really big. Now, I just want to say that there are three aspects in which a participation of the citizen, which is so important, which is the soul of the election, is ensured: information, motivation, and facilitation. People must know when and where and how to vote. There was a survey in Jharkhand which told that 30% people didn't vote in 2009 because they didn't have the EPIC card. But they did not know that EPIC card is not the only iCard. They can come with any iCard. Just an example. So they must know clearly information. In fact, one of the chapters from Election Commission sweep program can be taken by COVID-19 to handle the vaccine hesitancy. Then the second is motivation. I was told about brand ambassadors again by KV. Plenty of brand ambassadors, festivals, and how to connect with people and to convince them that voting is a big thing. It is their right and responsibility. Third and most important, I think our friend mentioned about that, is facilitation. As much can be done for the voter to facilitate to come to the polls, whether it is assured minimum facilities like shade, water, whether it is mobile polling booths, extended time, or even mobile booths for the Buddhist monks, one polling station for one voter. I mean, all these things, and engagement of IT in big time. Now, Election Commission in the next few days and months, for quite some time, in fact, it is focused on remote voting. How to make sure that NRIs and internal migrants as well are facilitated to vote. Oh, they can't come to the polling station on the voting day. So, but there is security issue, secrecy issue. So these are all being tackled with engagement of technology. And today, as you just now perhaps mentioned, President was there, and the e-EPIC has been launched today, by which people can pull out their EPIC by getting on the net. So things are moving very fast, and voter facilitation to make sure that the voter is enabled to exercise his franchise. Otherwise, it only remains on theory. If he's not last person, the most ordinary person must be the best facilitated. That's how I think the philosophy of election management is. We saw a great example, by the way, in recent COVID-19 election in Bihar, where despite all the problems which were talked about, this is the largest election at the time of COVID. And still we had a record turnout with health department and everyone coming. Social distancing, yes. Mask, yes. But still voting happened and happened well. So gradually from election to election, learning is going on. It's a continuous curve and election management is doing good and better. And I'm sure better to be seen in future. In the coming 5 elections, for example, we'll see some more experimentations.
Absolutely. So it's good to know that learning is happening. Learning is a continuous process, and we are implementing everything that we are learning as well. KV Prasad, what more needs to be done, do you think, to strengthen our young and vibrant democracy?
Well, I think the steps that have been taken and are obviously progressive. And as we are making the information technology more adept, and as we heard Mr. Rao tell us, and this morning too, there were some reports quoting the Chief Election Commissioner as to how they're going to try and remote voting. Now, that is one of the things people have been demanding for a pretty long time. Of course, there are issues rightly pointed out of secrecy, because casting the vote should remain sacrosanct. It should be entitled to the person entitled to vote should be the person casting the vote, and also in the constituency he or she is enrolled. Now these are some technical issues that are being looked at probably, and I think one more issue which probably would address by the e-epic which has just been launched is it will address to a certain extent the complaint of bogus voters. I remember once asking a former chief election commissioner on bogus voting. He said it's not the big thing. It's not that it's just that you are enrolled in a particular constituency and you move out and migrate on work or for some other reason to some other state in some other constituency and get yourself enrolled in the other state in the other constituency too. So your name practically does exist on two electoral rolls. Now, while the onus on getting deleted remains on the voter primarily, but the technology can now be leveraged because this kind of links you to the telephone. So probably if not in a big measure, certainly in a smaller way, it will start, because today not everybody has smartphones, but many people have smartphones. And this e-epic would probably try and address that issue in its own way. As per the other voting, already we heard the challenge that they're looking at how the NRI voters could be, because again, how do you cast their vote is an issue. Either they come to the constituency at the time of voting. I think part of it was addressed differently when the service voters were given a one-way electric transmission and electronics. I think about 4-5 years ago, the parliamentary committee had recommended it and it was accepted. So I think that probably is being thought about as a possible replication for NI voters. We will come to know the details as experiment would take place. Of course, there are safeguards that will have to be built in to ensure that the sanctity of the voting process remains intact.
Absolutely. Sunil Chaudhary, every election we hear some amazing stories. We get to see some amazing stories as well of election officers heading to far-flung corners of the country, sometimes walking for days, passing through treacherous terrain to ensure that no person is left behind, so that that last person sitting in a small village hundreds of miles or kilometers away from the city ensures that he or she can come and actually cast that particular vote. These are some great stories that we've seen and we've heard, and we like to appreciate the zeal of the officers as well as the citizens and the voters who actually come out and cast their vote. But going forward, do you believe that we can use technology, we can be a little innovative, we can change certain things around so that we don't have to go through so much of trouble?
Quite fit. The Election Commission has taken initiative, specifically in terms of the proxy voting, as we have seen how the elections are being as part of casting their vote through the papers. Similar exercises can also be taken, specifically when we see that most of the voters are the migrants. They are not staying in the same places where they cast their votes, and they may be at different places. When we see elections, panchayats to the assemblies and the Lok Sabha keep on taking place simultaneously, sometimes it becomes difficult for many voters who come back to their the parent places to cast their vote. So election can take some proactive initiatives, getting their votes cast either of the technology or others. Secondly, even with the context of diasporic communities, the government has taken stance how they bring about the participation of the NRIs. So a similar exercise can also be taken so that no one can be left out in this entire democratic process. I mean, these things are, not very easy. They need to be explored. But how we about among parties, government, and election commission, so that all are being involved as a part of this peaceful, smooth democratic process. So I think that's a big challenge, and maybe in the years to come, many modalities can be carried out, and many voters who are not at the time of the vote in their places, they can be engaged either through, there are different means where they can be engaged at the voting process. I think if that is done, then we can have the percentage from 67 to 80 and 90%. But still, it's a very good beginning. We are still engaged many voters across states coming back to their parent states to cast their vote. And government has brought about many new reforms, many new initiatives by private organizations, government organizations, allowing such people to take leaves and back to their parent places to cast their votes.
All right, time to get closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward, starting first with you, Akshay Roth.
Well, I think it is a two-side responsibility. While the establishment, of course, led by the Election Commission of India, including the political parties and political leaders, they have a responsibility to look at the smallest and the most ordinary citizen, their problems, their convenience in terms of while setting the election agenda, making the management, making arrangements that the rights are exercised properly without any vitiation. That's the role which the Election Commission of India can lead, but others have to contribute. From the side of the voter, like truly on the pledge, like the pledge that they take on the National Voters' Day today, going beyond all the divisive things, all divisive thoughts of caste, religion, undue influence of money, which is big, and other types of narrow considerations, they should have a broadened conscience to think of who is a good candidate, what's a good agenda, which is a good party, and vote by applying by the great and ethical application of their mind and conscience. That is how democracy can flourish. But in any case, the efforts which are started off in a symbolic manner from National Voters' Day, greater participation for a stronger democracy, that must be the rule of the game for the coming years.
Absolutely. KV Prasad.
I think one thing is very clear. The issue of addressing the challenge of getting more people to vote also needs to be addressed not just by the Election Commission itself in its role that it does, but also as pointed out by the political party and political leadership, because the level of skepticism and probably uninterestedness or disinterestedness among the voters is because of the circumstances or set of circumstances that they are faced with. And that is where the political leaders' challenges do come forward to try and address those issues and bring the voter out. In fact, I remember watching the American elections when I was working there. One of the biggest challenges every political party took was they called the GOTV, which is Get Out the Vote. So that used to be the major campaign among all political leadership, and they would say, let's go after each and every voter and try the voter come out of his or her home to cast the ballot. So that is what I think that is already being done behind, but it requires more than the Election Commission itself to address this.
Yeah, it has to be everyone's business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Sunil Chaudhary, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
I would say that voters are not aware voters, they are empowered voters, and I would say that voters in new democracy like ours, they are game changers. So they actually brought about development and governance to the main platform of electoral politics, and ensure that political parties and the governments have to be both accountable and responsible in order to stay democracy and to meet all those challenges years to come. So they're the real game changers in the contemporary times.
All right. With that, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, on National Voters' Day, let's all take a pledge to ensure that we go out and cast our vote each and every time when we need to do so. The process of voting has evolved and has changed and has changed with the times over the years, right from the 50s to 2021. ECI has ensured that it has brought out brand ambassadors, it has brought out several leaders to come out and encourage people to vote. Several schemes and reforms have been undertaken as well. New challenges have been addressed from time to time, and the process itself has been a learning process, and change has taken place whenever there was need for it. As far as the future is concerned, the Election Commission can only do that much. Everyone needs to come together, the political parties and the citizens of the country at large, to ensure that we keep the spirit of democracy alive and keep strengthening our vibrant democracy. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.